Hi, it's Amy T. Meyer with Helping the Brave. Today is actually Nate and I's first show together. And uh, so my name is Amy T. Meyer again, and I'm one of the hosts for Helping the Brave. I'm here with Nate, who is an Air Force veteran, and we have the pleasure of bringing Isabella Colvin, who is one of the founders of Heroes Challenge, and she's also a local chapter president for AUSA. Isabella, welcome to the show.
Thank you, ma'am.
So traditionally we speak about our transitioning service members, but although you are a past first responder, you've not served, but you are a military spouse. So why don't you tell us about yourself?
So, like you said, I'm Isabella Colvin. My husband spent 25 years in the Army and retired out here at Joint Base Lewis-McChord, his home state of Washington. And during retirement conversation, we started to talk about what transitioning looked like. And it led us into the nonprofit field, is how I landed where we are now.
So what is a Heroes Challenge? Tell us about that.
So it takes us back to duty station at Fort Lee, Virginia. It's a conversation that was started when we started to see a lot of post-traumatic stress. And there was an organization who had a conference, and that conference was just a holistic approach to what a family goes through during military service. And we came into this conversation accidentally. Right? Someone seen something in us that realized that we were struggling after multiple deployments, and we were struggling with communication, and we got caught in that base realignment over on the East Coast. And so the rapid base move, it started to cause a conversation in our marriage and just our life. And a sweet friend started to talk about organizations that helped. And so we jumped on team with a group called Branches of Valor, and they're an organization that wrote a combat trauma healing manual and a book that's called When War Comes Home, and that's specifically for spouses. And it was a beautiful conversation about how to navigate life and the challenges that we met while serving. And so upon retirement, we had been with the organization for, 6, 7 years. And Heroes Challenge is really compassed around families. And it is a once-a-year conference that happens in Cannon Beach, Oregon. And it is an opportunity for military families and first responders to come together and meet just amazing people who have knowledge and tools and skill sets to help you get through trials, whether it's trauma or stress or life or communication issues. So it is really a conference every year for our military families. And it's, 65, 70 families a year that we work with, but it branched out into other programs that we host locally.
That's so cool. So I actually got to go last time my husband was deployed. So my daughter and I, and then we took because I had a grandson that was staying with me. And I don't think for me I had ever gone to like an all-inclusive conference.
Yeah.
And so I do feel so talk to us about that. Like what does that mean for military families?
So here's what I love about it. One, we provide an opportunity to come in on a Friday, sit down with your family and have dinner. And then we have guest speakers, national speakers, and international speakers who come in. Who specialize in our life. They speak to us. And so it's childcare, right? We have watch care with programming from kindergarten through 18, and then we have nursery type opportunities for the youngers. And so a family can come together, have dinner, the parents get to go into classes or seminars and engage. The kids are taken care of, and it's from Friday night to Sunday afternoon. And so it really is all inclusive. Watch care, dinner, and your hotel or conference room.
Isabel, give like an example of some of the sessions that the parents could go through and like what those meetings look like.
Yeah, great question. You know, what we started to find is everybody wanted to talk about post-traumatic stress, right? We're just going to tell you what post-traumatic stress is, and you walk away from that conversation. And we're like, well, you start to know what that is. And so we have speakers that come in and they talk about communication skills, healthy boundaries, physical fitness for a wounded warrior, parenting skills. We have classes specifically for spouses, just to support conversation, especially when you live in what is a high stress environment sometimes that comes along with post-traumatic stress, how you can engage or not engage and still be in love with your husband. That's one of the most popular classes. But my husband is, or he was a resiliency trainer for the Army. So he uses a lot of the MRT conversation, which is a thoughtful conversation about self-control. And that is our for the men, the most popular class is being able to engage your mind and your mouth at the same time and not wound the people that you live with. Can I say that kindly?
We don't do that.
But you can. And so what I love about the conference specifically is it's a generational conversation. Parents are learning how to be good couple, but be good parents. And the children get a weekend of watching their mom and dad kind of decompress in an environment that's right there at the ocean. And so the setting is extremely important, but the content is usually provided by organizations that we can plug our family into afterwards. So it's not you just go away for a weekend and have a great vacation and you walk back into normal life. You get to go away and have a great weekend with good content. And on Monday, you get an email specifically to engage you in the organizations that partnered at the conference. And so we started a peer mentoring conversation is really what we did on purpose, but a little bit on accident.
Very good. I'm going to talk back to my experiences. My daughter was 16 or 17 when she went through with me. And I was really surprised at the content for her. Like, she was very engaged, and she is not always an easy engagement. I don't know how to say that. But I was really impressed with the content for me, but then also the content and the amount of satisfaction she had. And even my grandson being in the nursery part.
Yeah.
Like, he was totally taken care of. And I think people forget in the military mindset and even in the first responder mindset, childcare, to be able to take your family and it be a part of a thing is amazing.
Thank you. I love that, Amy, because there's some things that you start to see in families who are high stress, right? And so I think about your sweet daughter. They're educated in things, whether we want them to be or not. They're educated in anger. They're educated in stress. And they can identify things in families that we think they're clueless about. And so what I loved about Sage specifically is she's so smart, and her engaging was a graceful conversation about, I need skills, right? So we have teenagers who participate in these conversations. They need skills to be able to interact with their family during high stress environment. But it's a weekend where everybody's having the same conversation. And so We have a speaker on Friday night that kind of breaks open a conversation about engage as much as you want. Walk out when you need to. This is really for you. This is really just tools and skills, but it's for your whole family. And so on Saturday, when we go into, the workshops, the first section of workshops all cover the same topics, whether it be for men, women, or family, or for the kids. They cover the same content about basic structure of living with military stress and transition. The second part of the sessions all cover the how do you deal with it and what tools are you going to take home. And so sometimes conferences scatter you and you're having 15 different conversations and there's no unity. We work really hard at layering it in so everyone is on the same wavelength of thought, even the children. So the children don't just go and watch movies or go and read a book. We have activities that are based and challenge them on their core strengths, and that I think it just builds a unity conversation. And so we find the kids are the ones who ask to come back, especially that 10 to 18 range. They had enough engagement in the weekend that they're interested in coming back. So I appreciate that you bring that up, because Sage is special.
But I think, and I appreciate that. I think she's pretty special too. But I mean, I think of first responder families. Nate, maybe you can talk about this. Like when you were a first responder, how amazing it would be to go to a conference that's all inclusive, that you brought your whole family to, not just you and your wife.
Oh, absolutely. And I think, it's hard. Military first responders, we tend to think about what we have to go through and what we're doing in the moment. And we tend to kind of forget the impact that it has on the kids. And so being able to incorporate kids into it and into the conversation is huge. I know, like, I don't think I realized until after I kind of transitioned that the amount of stress that it was putting on the kids, just me going out and not knowing where I was, what was going to happen. And I was a Navy brat, so I understood, like, dad's going to leave, dad's not going to be home. I understood all that, but I don't think I really ever processed the day in and day out of what some of that looks like. And especially when I was firefighting, you're reading, you know, it's more live now. There's more. You've got Facebook Live, you've got, Instagram, you've got all these things that allow people to see what is happening in the moment, which is great, unless your kid is sitting at home thinking about what is happening in that moment and what is my dad doing, what is my mom doing, what's going on. And I think it's awesome that you can incorporate those kids and allow them to kind of start dealing with that versus a situation like me where I was an adult when I really started processing a lot of the stress of just being a military brat, and I didn't even have the first responder side of things. So I think that's awesome that you guys are doing that young.
Gosh, thank you.
So are you finding that in your conference, is it like a broad spectrum mix, or do you find a certain demographic of service member or first responder that tends to be at your conference more often?
So what I love about the conversation is it's a personal conference. I feel like it shares itself, right? It's word of mouth. I mean, you do the advertising and marketing, but there's someone who's always referring someone, and we watched that through COVID. And so our demographic is really people who are actively seeking a conversation. And I think that is what makes the conference what I would consider successful in approaching conversations. It's that personal invitation. I know someone, you know someone, and introducing them in. We only have 65 to 70 slots. And so we see a wide range. We had a gentleman who was World War II. He's become one of our mentors, and you'll see him, in the lobby the last year before COVID. But it's everyone from 80, 88 years old down to 19 years old. And it's really a kind conversation about who's wanting to invest in themselves.
Very good. I think so. Like you said it's from Friday to Sunday. Is it like up at 6 a.m. till 10 o'clock at night? Give us a little bit of an itinerary.
Well, what I love is Friday night. You come in and you start with dinner. It's not one of the conference where you throw everything in a room and you jump into a conference or a speaker. You come in and you settle in and you have dinner with your family, and we try and keep it really family style. And then your kids go into programs, and you get to come in and sit and just spend about 45 minutes engaging in the weekend. It's the basic introduction of the weekend, and then breakfast. I'm not a 4 a.m. girl or a 6 a.m. girl, but you come in as you choose for breakfast. Sessions don't start until 9:30, and so you kind of have flow. You have some control of your weekend, and the dining room is open. And what I love is the kitchen there at Canna Beach Conference Center, where we're at, is housed by culinary students, so you get a good breakfast. And then you can jump into sessions, and that's a flow that you choose. You pick and choose where you go. You pick and choose your topics, and you pick and choose the times that you want to engage. And so it's lunch, Saturday afternoon. Lunch is really a grab and go. You can eat on campus. That's totally fine. Or we're in walking distance of everything in downtown. So you can skip lunch and take your family out to lunch. You can take the to-go lunch to the shore and eat it right there. And then at about 6 o'clock, we kind of hurdle everybody back in for dinner. And then it's just an evening time for the adults in the last session. Sunday morning, we kind of sometimes see people tip out early if they've got a ways to travel. And we do have people that fly in for this conference, which is really cool. And then we feed you lunch after the final closeout session, which is just a basic conversation of who you are, and where you want to go in the future. And I always love the future conversation because it shows them you came in with something, you kind of left it here, you unpacked it a little bit, and in the future, you're going to do it differently. And we're going to give you tools to do that. That's that last morning session. We connect you to all the speakers, trainers, teachers. We feed you lunch, and then out you go. And you can spend the rest of the afternoon traveling home or in the community. So it's not like it's a heavy itinerary and you have selections all weekend. It's really your choice. And that's a little different than some other conferences I've been to.
Certainly. So, Nate, do you have a question?
Yeah, I've got kind of a weird question. It's more from my own thought process and understanding. When you guys initiate these conversations or when people, sign up for this, is it more the service member that's doing it or the spouse, or same thing with the first responder? Are they the one reaching out for help, or is it normally a family member that goes, I think we could do this? Or do you know that information?
Listen, I love your sweet smile. So there's a couple of things. Because it's word of mouth, it's usually a spouse who talks about what's going on in the home. Not my husband. It's usually a spouse who starts to have this conversation about needing something, a companion, help, guidance. And so when they reach out, we start this point of contact, right? And so we have several points of contact before we come to the conference. But I think 85 to 90% of the time, it's the spouse who's looking. And I think that's amazing because that means they're investing, is what I like about that conversation. And so as you start to get closer to conference dates, we've sent you the schedule, we've sent you the itinerary, the speakers, the classes. And so if you have an unwilling spouse or a spouse who feels like there's no way I'm going to engage in anything emotional, we can kind of pare that conversation down and let them see how we're not attacking you. It's totally open to you to choose how you want to engage. And we have had a couple, only 3 that I know of, who didn't engage in any workshops. But by the time he had spent the weekend with his family, having dinner at the shore, as we were walking out, he said, I would do this next year, and this is the class I think I would like to take. And I went, that's it. I'm signing you up. Stop at the front desk. And so it is. It's the spouses and it's the connection before that gets people in the seats.
I also think, the speakers that you have are really neat. Like there was a Marine Corps speaker the year that I went he was so funny. He was like, I don't know if you consider yourself a veteran if you're not a Marine. And I'm like, what? Yeah. And so, but he was super funny and he just off the cuff. And I could see a lot of the first responder or a lot of the service members that were in the room that were really listening to him. And he talked about almost like, I don't want to say caustic masculinity, but definitely issues from being a Marine Corps officer. And then I think he went into becoming a youth pastor and he got fired because you couldn't say the things that you said, on the battlefield to people in your congregation. And I don't know, I felt like it was super authentic, the speakers and a lot of different pieces and parts to it. Yeah. So you said, it was from a conversation on the East Coast when you were serving. How did the parts come together for you? Like, how did you go, okay, I need to create this nonprofit. I need to create this experience on the West Coast?
Because I like to do things with other people. I love community, and I feel like I don't have all the answers. And there were so many organizations that were just starting to approach the veteran conversation, life after service, and the transition conversation. And I started to see not everybody could talk to me about my marriage. Not everybody could talk to me about transition. And so we started to actively look at people who were invested in keeping a family together. And we found other organizations who were dedicated to the purpose of family and health, wellness, physical wellness, mental wellness, spiritual wellness, all of those things that are kind of the pillar of, the Army's, the 5 pillars of the Army resiliency. We just found people who were heavily invested and trained, and we really work with people who specialize in things, right? And so I think about Mighty Oaks. They are a bunch of Marines, but their whole goal is to keep a family together and keep a soldier on the planet. And so they run large camps, and they're gender specific. They have them for men, women, and now for spouses. And so for me, it was just not having all the answers and not knowing what questions to ask, but being willing to ask. And that's what I did. I just started asking, who's the best at this? Who's had this experience? And we just put together a network, a nationwide network of people.
Very cool. Nate?
Yeah, I mean, she's answered a lot of my questions. I'm really, kind of interested in finding out a little bit more personally, just, because my kids have gone through a lot, obviously, with different things. And so let's talk about that. So if a family is interested in starting conversations, what is their first step? How do we get in touch with you, and how do we, move forward?
That's, this podcast is a great way to move forward. And I know Amy will share my contact information. And the one thing that we don't do is we don't pass you off. You'll talk to me or my husband, and we'll have a conversation about where your family's at. And then, what's the viability of you being able to come out to Oregon? And if not out here, on the coast, we have nationwide community connectors and that are doing the same kind of thing. And so we can start to have a conversation the day that we talk to you about how to get you into a community right where you are. That's my favorite part. And so I feel like the conference is kind of just the wrap up of a year. So we work with Project New Hope. My husband and I both sit on that board, and they do retreats, and they come on board to wholeheartedly support the Canna Beach Conference. But they do conferences or they do retreats year round. And so we can plug you into some of those opportunities. You know, Mighty Oaks is an organization that does year-round, real peer-based mentoring. And they're in California, but they're nationwide. You know, so there's multiple organizations. The installations that we've been to have a conversation called Reboot, and it's a 12-week course that you and your spouse can sit in and have a conversation right there in your backyard, and that's nationwide also. So really, Amy's going to hand out my email for everybody, and just reach out. Sincerely take the opportunity to reach out, and if you have questions about organizations in your area, I'm happy to start to do that network navigating, you know, for other families, because you don't have to come to the coast. It's great, but there are other organizations in your backyard who are willing to have this conversation with you and invested in your family.
Very good. So if you, so do you have, how many years have you been doing this conference?
I'm so excited. So 10 years. 10 years. Branches of Valor started this conversation, and we didn't know when we participated, it was their launch. It really was happenstance. And so Chris and Ranella Adset really poured their heart and soul into building healthy families who grow through the trauma. And so when they retired the conference, they gave it to John and I, and they just mentored us. And so we're coming into our 10th season.
Very good. Let me think. So like you had said, anybody who goes to info@helpingthebrave.com, I'll absolutely give you information to contact Isabella and Heroes Challenge. And I think it's heroeschallenge.net is your website.
It is.
And so I encourage everybody to, you know, check it out if you're interested and look through that. Let me think of any last questions that I could ask. As female service members are getting to be a larger commodity, you know, women's services is always or has been, you know, we've been fighting for our country since the inception of our country, but in every role, in every way that we do now, it's new. So therefore, there's other traumas that are going to be more prevalent in the female service members. Have you noticed any difference as far as your conference in having dual military, dual first responders, and just some different things that way?
Yeah, you know, I think some of that goes back to like, why hasn't there been more programs? Why hasn't there been this longevity conversation about women in service? Part of it's because women process, right? We're emotional processors. Men are head processors, but sometimes women are emotional processors. And so what's happened is we've taken off all the stigma of having an emotional reaction to a trauma. Like I just from history, sometimes hear people say she's overreacting, right? And so sitting in a training, taking the stigma off of that for women who have served, whether it be in any service capacity, including first responders, taking their emotional response out as a negative, taking that off the block, allows them to have a freer conversation about engaging in good health care. And so part of that good health care is mental health care. And so we have seen an increase, 25% really, increase in women who are engaging publicly, you know, at conferences, in groups, and on podiums like this, Amy, they're really coming out and having a good conversation about who they are and their time in service. But I think it was just taking off that stereotype and allowing people to process mental health care, like, physical health care or any other kind of wellness program. But yeah, we really have seen an increase, and it's good. It's good because, a lot of times it's self-healing. I sometimes hear female veterans talk about, they're self-healing. They've done all the work all by themselves. And then I think about what that would look like if they could have embraced someone else. Let's multiply that opportunity and reach out to other females who are struggling. And so, yeah, it's a growing demographic, and I think it's probably time. It's past time, but I think having you in a spot like this has helped. Like, it helps to have people who've served in the military and who can have a conversation about not always being wonderful.
I'm not always wonderful, everyone, just so you know.
Well,
So is there anything else that you would like to share with our audience?
Oh, I was going to wait for Nate. Nate, did you have something?
Yeah, I was going to say, kind of to echo what you were saying. I think it's interesting because even Amy brought up toxic masculinity, and we kind of talk about it. It's kind of like one of those hot topics right now that everybody uses it. It's a buzzword, and not a lot of people understand completely what it means. But I remember back when dealing with my grandfather, who was a World War II vet, stormed Normandy, did Battle of the Bulge, was in some, and he just never talked about it. And I think one of the things you guys do and people like you is allow us to talk. And I think whether you're female, you're male, whatever, the stigma is there that you're not supposed to talk about it. You're supposed to kind of push it down. Nobody truly understands it. And so it's really great when you get connected to people who say, no, this is normal. What you're feeling, what you're going through is normal. Other people are feeling the same things. Let's talk about it. Let's work through it. Let's figure out what the next step is and how we can heal and how we can move on. And until we get there, unfortunately, that number of 22 is going to stay where it's at until we can start actually processing and talking and dealing with it together. And so I think these networks become more and more important.
Yeah, I agree. I think about a football game when you're winning, right? When you're winning and the crowd is cheering and it's amazing. You build on that strength, that energy from other people. But when a team is losing and everyone is silent and they're sitting in the stands, you start to question everything, right? You start to just see that. And I see that in mental health care. When you have people who are invested in you, you can go forward. And if you get in a place where you're stuck, they're there to push you. And so I love that for the conference. I love being someone's cheerleader. If you have an issue, let's tackle this as a team. Let me be your cheerleader. Let me sometimes be your advocate. Sometimes let me be your mouthpiece, but let me be in it with you. And I agree. The more people who are having this conversation, the more people we can help.
Agreed. And I like that it's, all services and first responders. Yeah. Like, there's so many shared experiences within this peer group that healing together is really, really needed.
Yeah. Well, trauma attacks everyone. And so often we see the first responders that we have participate are prior military, and they haven't dealt with their trauma. So it's a compound trauma, right? So now you're looking at legacy trauma or generational trauma. And it's those people who serve, like, wounded servants. They talk about wounded servants. And so it's just an opportunity, I feel like, to grow a conversation. And what I've loved through the years is watching couples meet at conference and continue those relationships on throughout the year, and that mentoring conversation. So it's just grown. It's grown as a conference. It's become a family, and it's open to everyone. Hey, that was clever.
Write that down.
Right, for sure.
It's a good thing it's recorded.
Yeah, he would be proud, wouldn't he? Yeah.
Yes, yes. All right. Well, so I will I'm going to wrap us up. I want to say if you're watching us on YouTube, please like and hit subscribe. Thank you everybody for joining us today, and Matt Denny for, his comment, great conversation. And I look forward to all the good things that you do, Isabella. You are an incredible resource and just an amazing friend. So thank you so much for you spending your time with us. Thank you, Nate, also for figuring out StreamYard with me. As we miss Ed Parcaut doing amazing things and growing also as a professional and an individual. And so we are going to miss our Thursday, but we will be back in a week. And so thank you, everybody. And hold on, Isabella, once I get my mouse back to the right screen.